Hi, ACC Docket readers. Thanks for tuning into our Global Perspective series. I'm Maggie Baccinelli, Assistant Editor for ACC Docket, and today I'll be speaking with Don Hughes, Vice President and General Counsel EMEA at Hitachi Data Systems. We'll be talking about the trend of European companies moving into expanding emerging markets. Hi, Don. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Maggie.
So in our recent extended interview, we spoke at length about economic growth trends of emerging markets and the opportunity these markets present to European companies who are suffering along Europe's economy. Your list was really long, but today I'd like you to give us an abbreviated version. So what top 3 emerging markets should companies keep their eyes on with regards to growth potential?
Well, Maggie, Bloomberg published a list of what they saw as the top 20 emerging markets earlier this year. They based that list on more than a dozen criteria, including World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, IMF forecasts, perceived level of corruption, and economic freedom. Now, Asian and African countries featured heavily on the list, but the top 3 EMEA markets in Bloomberg's list were the Czech Republic, with an expected GDP growth rate of 21.1% to 2017, Turkey, with an expected growth rate of 21.2% to 2017, and Russia with an expected growth rate of 26.6%.
Okay, so another point you emphasized during the interview was that with this opportunity comes great risk, especially with regards to corruption and other legal issues. So you've pointed out that both the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index and Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index reversely correlate with economic opportunity, revealing that the countries with the greatest growth potential are often the riskiest from a corruption perspective. So can you give us an example of that reality and tell us what corruption issues council should be wary of in particular?
Well, it's quite interesting to see where countries rank in both World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index and Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index, and compare that against GDP growth rates for 2012. A number of African countries are near the top of the list for growth in 2012, but they scored badly in both of the 2 indices. Quite a number of FCPA prosecutions have arisen because of bribes paid in Africa. The one issue I would point out is that a lot of companies use an indirect channel, i.e. distributors, resellers and agents, to break into new markets. And this can be a real risk to companies. There used to be a misconception that companies were not liable for the actions of their third-party intermediaries. But this view has been well and truly corrected by the number of prosecutions of companies for the actions of such third parties, both for FCPA and for export control violations.
Right. Well, it sounds like Hitachi Data Systems has a really great compliance program. You've earned the Ethisphere Institute's The World's Most Ethical Company Award 3 times in a row. And I know that your company has been expanding rapidly over the last 5 years. So how have you ensured anti-corruption compliance and dealt with the issues that you've been talking about?
There are a number of elements to an effective compliance program, although I probably don't have time to go through all of them now. When we spoke previously, I pointed out the importance of tone from the top. In addition, I would add the following. Firstly, proper due diligence and monitoring of partners, depending on the region in which they are located. Secondly, an effective gifts and entertainment policy. And thirdly, constant training of employees and partners in these regions.
Fantastic. That's most of the time that we have for today. So do you have any closing notes for us?
Well, Maggie, there are huge opportunities for European and indeed global companies outside of Europe. For instance, Russia is UK PLC's fastest growing export market, having grown 40% in the last year alone. With opportunity comes risk, however, and companies need to consider both local and international laws when expanding into these markets.
Great. Well, thanks so much, John.
Thank you, Maggie.
And thank you, readers, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.